One of the biggest tasks in all of life is finding a way to adapt to the realities of life. In fact, the whole of the human species has that task, the task of adapting, because if it fails to adapt to the realities of life, the species goes out of existence. But we, in our own territory, our own corner, we keep on returning to what we think should have happened. And in that regard, we're not really accepting the reality or adapting to it. We resent the reality. And like Job in the Old Testament, we want to blame somebody. And if we can't blame somebody, we'll blame God, we'll blame life. We reject the notion that life would be better if only we could find release. We don't want to find release. We keep going over it. We refuse to take the release road. We refuse to believe in a new reality. We keep holding on to the old reality, when in fact we might remember or stop remembering. Remembering that we can in fact do something about our adaptational capacities. Now, you've probably heard the words many times. What have I done to deserve this? I've done nothing wrong, so why should I have to suffer this way? Anyway, it makes no sense. No sense at all. But then we forget that life does not come with a guarantee that it will make sense. It comes. Meaning is not built into it. Somehow we have to build our meaning into it. What we know is this, that life deals out its hand and we have to adapt or we go under. We have to make sense of things or we become full of complaints. We have to find out who and what we will be, knowing that there'll come a time when we will not be. So in the gospel story today, in the Gospel of St. Mark, we heard the story of a man bringing his son to Jesus, hoping that he would relieve his son of his chronic condition. Now, the detailed account of that story, when you come to read it, is hardly credible to us in our generation. But what is credible? What is credible is the plea to have faith, to go on searching for a solution. Rather than settling for this situation, nothing can be done, seek a different solution. Even the strongest faith, however, can run out of steam. And we fall in a heap and say, what's the good of faith? I had faith once, but it did me no good. Here in this passage it says, look again. There is a resigned adaptation where we resign to a situation that's as good as it gets, that's it, that's how it will be. And there is the determined adaptation where we go on searching, determined to find some solution, some soothing, some support, some strength, some statement about who we will now be in the light of what has happened. It might not be the solution to relieve us of our pain, but it will be a solution that will help us cope better with it, to relieve us of that anxiety or that painful situation. We let all the energy of faith so quickly run out. Or we regather ourselves and begin to rebuild a new sense of our resilience, a new statement about ourselves. So, let us see if we can do that. Sebastian Jonger's story is a story pitched out there on the Atlantic Ocean. Several men were on a fishing expedition, but, as happened too often, they lose their lives. Now, if the men had simply lost their lives and their bodies were lying in state somewhere, their loved ones could have said their goodbyes and get on with their lives. But the author of this story said, the truth is, however, they did not die. They disappeared from the face of the earth and were never seen again. There it was, never to return. The families most willfully have to extract these men from their lives and banish them to another world. How difficult that is. He writes of one wife, a wife of one of the missing men, Marianne Smith. After almost a month, she is still trying to absorb the loss of her husband. So the planes fly over, searching, and she goes on holding on to some hope, just a shred of hope. And that keeps her in this kind of ghastly limbo. If only she could accept the fact that they have gone, that they are dead, there is the reality, would she adapt better? Adapting to a loss, reshaping life after the event, discovering the new person she now will be, with strengths, perhaps strengths that she didn't previously know. So at one level of life, adapting means absorbing, accepting the reality of what has occurred, reshaping our life in the aftermath, sometimes discovering something about ourselves, something good, something bad, losing our way or finding a new way, being thrown into uncertainty or discovering a new way to cope. One of the psychological studies I read about was done on a group of rats. They placed these little animals in a cage on a wire grill. And they electrified the wire grill. Some rats sat there and steadily endured the shocks. Others tried to escape the shocks and became so full of stress symptoms that they were unable to cope with anything. The coping rats, so-called, the ones who sat steadily in place, the study said showed real endurance, a capacity to survive the shocks and the stresses. The non-coping rats were jumping all over the place. They lacked the capacity to be steady for a moment, to endure the stress that was being inflicted upon them. Now, I don't commend these studies too much, except to say they are teaching us about ourselves. If we switch to human studies, men who suffered heart attacks, those who steadily took account of what had happened, and then decided to change their life and their lifestyle, showed a lowered morbidity 8 years afterwards. Those who didn't listen to what had happened to them, but kept on their frantic existence, did not survive. Or a study of 78 women with breast cancer. Only half of them decided to change their life in a positive way. Those women who found a positive meaning in their breast cancer exhibited a significant, better psychological adjustment. So in these few snippets of different studies, we are prompted to ask, well, what is a successful adaptation? We all know things happen. We didn't expect this to happen. Or maybe we saw this coming. We made a huge mistake. We ran into a difficult time. We took on a new job and it turned out to be a disaster. We realized that we can no longer achieve what we once thought we could achieve. We're now in a new phase of life. How do we adapt? Sometimes adapting needs strength to stay steady and endure. Sometimes adapting calls for something to soften the sensitive places. Sometimes adapting requires some informed and relevant support. Do you know that people often run in to give their commiserations, but it's rarely very helpful. Sometimes we need to be able to throw new light onto a different situation, onto a difficult situation. Sometimes we need to see if we can find some sense in a stressful, apparently senseless situation. And sometimes we need to fall back a moment to regather our own inner strengths. So let me recap all of that. We know that our realities can be very difficult. Can we make sense of them? Are there any softeners or soothers? What strengths are relevant and available? Strengths from within? Strength coming from the support of others? Strength coming from a larger view of life? Strengths coming from other resources of life that help our mood, that change our belief in ourselves, that change our belief anyway. Strength that will help us grow in strength, in character, in understanding, or even in softening. At one level of adaptation, it's about absorbing the reality and getting on with life and reshaping our life, discovering who we really are and what we can become. That is to say, looking into the depths of our personality and in the very heights, depths and heights of our personality, so that we might be stronger or see things differently. Look again at the strengths we need for a constructive adaptation to difficult situations or to the catastrophic life events. Strengths from the inner self to try and make sense of what has occurred, to draw on our past experiences or training or education, to steady our personality so that we will filter out those negatives, those bad memories, and focus on the good strengths and the good memories. That's strength from within the self, strength from other people. Yes, other people can be there. They can encourage us to lift our mood, encourage us to see the situation differently. They can encourage us to open our minds to different resources. Or we can gain strength from other resources altogether, from music, from stories, from moods, and so on. All of that, as I retake these things together. Strengths for the world of life's experiences, giving us capacity to think of being released from our past way of thinking and to reshape the future. So there are some ways whereby adaptation can take place. Now, there are plenty of people who will tell you what you should do to get over it and get on with life. There are plenty of people who will tell you what you shouldn't have done, and you wouldn't have had this problem on your hands. Now and again, those people have loads of good advice, but will it work? We know that we need a little soothing, a little steadying, a little strengthening, a little good support. Do you hear those words coming through? Soothing, steadying, strengthening, support. And along with all that that's happening, we do need the pointing finger. The pointing finger. A pointing finger pointing to a different way of seeing things. A pointing finger pointing to the possibilities for our own self. Pointing to a better way of coping. A different self. So what does adapting mean? It means that we're no longer hurting so much. It means that we're less anxious. It means that we're finding a way to cope, and we're getting more confident at doing so. It means that we're getting stronger in ourselves. It means that we stop blaming others, or blaming ourselves, or God, or life. It means that we have become part of something bigger that helps us reshape our way and rediscover a different self. Adaptation means that there are reminders of the pointing finger. And the pointing finger, it points to the need of all of us to adapt to life. We need to adapt to life's events, to reshape our life each day, to rediscover continually the fullness and wholeness of our personality, and to remember those things that are worth remembering, those things that bring softness and strengthening to our lives, and let the other memories pass us by. Now, within the New Testament, we know that the pointing finger was Jesus looking beyond the situation. As we took the gospel reading today, Jesus said, everything is possible if you have faith. And the man said, we have faith. Help me where faith falls short. And so Jesus stretched out his hand. The pointing finger stretched out his hand to say, here is a different way. A different way. Are we being serious about wanting to adapt to life's difficulties? If we're being serious, we need to let go, to be released from that and to follow the pointing finger. It's pointing to a different way of being, to a new way of life, to a different conception of ourselves, to strengths that are given to us, to good memories, good hopes, a good and productive faith. Would you please stand? And would you say with me, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And the blessing. May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forwards. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.